How are we going, guys? Aaron, Aldred Performance here, bringing you something a bit different today. I want to touch on a few of the pieces of gym gear that I've bought for my sort of home studio training setup here, what I would recommend, what I wouldn't recommend and probably shouldn't have bought in hindsight, and yeah, just basically a bit of pros and cons about a few of the pieces of equipment that I have here that I use regularly. To kick off the first episode of this series, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Tib Bar by the Home Gym Guy. This is the Tib Bar here. What the Tib Bar is basically aimed at doing is strengthening your tibialis anterior, which is one of the main muscles that run down the front of your shin here, this big meaty long part there. What the tibialis anterior actually does is it helps control the dorsiflexion of the foot. What that essentially means is that when I hit my foot on the ground and sort of strike the floor there, if I have a functioning, strong, healthy tibialis anterior, it helps mitigate that stress being transferred up to the knee there. So it helps me control that knee's position in relation to where that foot and ankle is. If it's not a healthy, strong, functioning tibialis anterior there, what happens is often that stress sort of reverberates up through the foot, up through the ankle, and then can lead to the knee as well, and then potentially irritate the knee, as well as causing a lot of shin splints and other conditions of the like there. So, bottom line, moral of the story there, we want healthy, strong tibialis anteriors. As it's much more of a behind the scenes working sort of muscle, you may not notice it immediately if it starts to detrain a little, but eventually it will catch up to you. So you want to stay on top of them and keep them healthy and happy. While the Tib Bar might look a bit intimidating and a bit unusual, it's super simple.
Alright, so here we've got a bit of a video of the Tib Bar in action. So essentially my feet just slide in between the lower pillar and the higher cushion pillar there. Rest very comfortably on my feet, and pretty much all you're doing is just lifting that ankle towards you, letting it drop away with the weight going down towards the floor, pulling it up and down and repeating through that action there. Super simple, super isolated to the tibialis anterior, and exactly what you want.
One of the biggest benefits of the Tib Bar itself is the way it's offsetting the load. So you imagine the fulcrum point, as my foot's in here, I'm moving that whole weight at a nice angle. Comparatively, if I was to try and perform the same exercise with a kettlebell here, I set myself up, the way that the foot and kettlebell sit weight-wise, it's not a direct lever there. So as I come down, I get that stretch, but as I come up, I'm not anywhere near as loaded in that top position. Whereas with the Tib Bar, because of the angle, my foot still has that weight directly down, whereas there, that weight's more so sitting back on my foot. That difference in the offsetting of the load between the Tib Bar here and the kettlebell there is probably one of the biggest things I noticed first off the bat using this Tib Bar, and definitely grew on me. The difference in sensation makes it a little bit tougher, so maybe a weight you were doing previously with a single leg kettlebell there isn't going to translate directly over to how much you're going to be doing on the Tib Bar, but I found it to be quite a good way of loading and being able to really like push it strength-wise with a quantifiable sort of metric, whereas with the logistics of trying to get a larger and larger kettlebell there to really like test out how strong your tibialises are, that's much more limited than the structured linear way of being able to load this with plates. One of the cons I have noticed with this item, it may just be due to the plastic sort of locking clamp that was provided with it, but going heavier than anything around the sort of 25 kilo mark will have the plates basically start to sort of push the locking clamp away until it eventually falls off. That may be able to be solved with a different style of clamp, like a metal one. I haven't really investigated it too much, so can't really necessarily fault the design of the actual Tib Bar for that, more so just the clamp they provided. So definitely something worth looking into. If you're quite a bigger, stronger sort of trainee, you may need to look into a different clamp. If you're not pushing a lot of weight, then you probably wouldn't need to worry about that at all though. I would say this product hits the target demographic of recreational athletes as well as active people quite well, specifically more towards the running side, where especially if you're doing a high amount of volume per week, you want to be on top of keeping that sort of lower limb specifically healthy because of that high volume you're doing. So you imagine if I'm covering 30K a week of running but doing minimal strength training on the side, my joints are experiencing a lot of load there, and my muscles may struggle to be able to keep up with that sort of demand of keeping everything healthy, happy, and basically functioning as it should. And this being not a necessarily very expensive piece of gear, super compact, also very portable and very easy in the sense of it takes seconds to change load. So if I've got a group of say 3 or 4 people working together in a circuit, To change load for this takes literal seconds. Super convenient, super easy. It's a very user-friendly product as well. You don't need a large amount of sort of technical insight or movement skill to be able to perform it. You imagine when performing sort of an alternative to this, maybe like a wall-leaning tibialis anterior raise where I'm leaning back on the wall and lifting my foot up. That probably requires a little bit more sort of movement control because I'm coordinating multiple joints staying in the same position while only moving one. Whereas here, because I'm pretty much sitting on a bench and basically just lifting my foot up and down, it's super simple. It's basically impossible to mess up as it's just a single joint isolation movement. The one thing that I would say they could improve on is to have some sort of way to modify it to be a unilateral variant. Obviously, it's quite a well-designed product, but only really allows for bilateral use. I'm pretty sure the home gym guys have actually recently started either designing or released a unilateral variant. Haven't got my hands on one of those yet, but would be awesome to test one out and to see how that compares with my experience with this one. Definitely something I'm looking to in the future, as the ability to have this same sort of offset loading pin with quantifiable plate numbers and a unilateral loading ability would be perfect match made in heaven, basically. All in all, very solid piece of gear, highly recommend. Again, it's probably not the first thing I'd buy if I was setting up a home setup, as something like a dumbbell, kettlebells, and just general free weights and the like are gonna be the main staples that I would go to first, because I can improvise them to help me perform a similar function to what this does, but I can't do the other way around. So definitely something aimed at more of a moderate home gym setup where you've got some free weights, you may have a power rack, you may have some barbells already, and are looking to add some multifunctional pieces of equipment where you're using things you already have, i.e. I already have my plates, Olympic size. I think they come in a regular size as well, but I have Olympic plates, so I bought an Olympic size one. And yeah, being able to basically use those weights I already have in addition to this piece of gear and get more functionality is perfect. So that's probably where I'd sit that and who I'd be saying this is best aimed at. But yeah, works great. Highly recommend. That about wraps up my review for the Tib Bar. Stay tuned for the next episode touching on my Iron Edge Aqua Bag. Until then, keep it real, keep training, and stay hungry.